In February 1990, Sunsoft released Batman the video game on the NES to the North American market. Based on the summer blockbuster from 1989, Tim Burton's Batman was the highest grossing film of the year in the US by a wide margin, and a subsequent video game was inevitable. Often regarded as one of the most difficult games on the NES, Batman went through several development changes before the final version saw light of day. An earlier prototype, which has found its way to the internet in recent years, was actually a little bit harder. Several of the enemies the player encounters were nerfed a bit to balance the challenge of the game, while the most notable differences between the two versions are the cutscenes that play out in between levels, and the fact that the Joker only appears in the cutscenes, and no boss fight with him ever takes place. Firebug is the final enemy you face in that early beta. Also in the prototype, the cutscenes are completely different and carry more of a comic book feel. Vicky Vale is kidnapped at the start of the game, and Batman races off to find her, all the while a bit surprised by a place called Gotham City? I guess the developers didn't know much about the series. Die-hard fans of The Killing Joke have also pointed out a lot of the art that we see in these cutscenes was lifted directly from the pages of the popular graphic novel, illustrated by Brian Bolland, yet no mention of him nor The Killing Joke appear in the Proto's credits. By the time the game was finalized, all cutscenes were reworked to better capture the feel of the movie, though Vicky Vale is never mentioned again after the introduction. And the game retains the enemy likenesses from the comic books, rather than having you battle your way through Joker's men from the film. And finally, the game sports one of the most memorable soundtracks on the NES. Composed by Naoki Kodaka, the same man behind awesome soundtracks like Journey to Silius, Blaster Master, Gremlins 2, and Batman Return of the Joker, just to name a few. These elements combined, along with fun, challenging gameplay, make Batman one of the most complete titles you'll find for the old school NES. Alright, let's tackle this bad boy. You know, I'm actually kind of surprised I've not covered this game in the past. This is a terrific game by Sunsoft, and they really made some great games for the NES that personally I don't feel get talked about enough. And just thinking about some of the titles, they did a great port of Spy Hunter, arcade smash hit from the 80s, of course. Gremlins 2, Fester's Quest, even though it was a lot harder, I think, than a lot of casual fans would like, but Blaster Master, probably my favorite game that they've ever done. I will definitely get to that one at some point. The introduction here's got this kind of annoying flicker that we don't see in the prototype. That early beta didn't try to superimpose any text over images like with what we see here, and personally I kind of wish they'd stuck with that. I assume the change was made probably due to the hardware limitations of the NES, but could also be that they just wanted to make the text pop a little bit and not blend in with the background. Yeah, it's definitely kind of taxing to look at now. I love the soundtrack in this game though, so much so that there's an alternate version of this video that went up, the vanilla version, if you will. No commentary, no extra bells and whistles, just a straight playthrough if you'd rather enjoy the music. Here we go. Opening cutscene begins, and being a kid growing up in the 80s, this was some pretty entertaining stuff, these cinema scenes. Pretty cutting edge for back then. As we begin, get my bearings here. And right off the bat, of course, one of the things to point out, Batman is kind of bluish purple instead of black, like he is in the '89 film. I actually have a hacked ROM that corrects this and makes him the proper color. And after playing with it, I kind of see why they went with the blue, purple, whatever you want to call it. This game is presented as rather dark, and I think if they went with kind of a dark gray, blackish kind of sprite, you'd probably have Batman kind of blending in with the backgrounds a little bit more than they would have liked. So I don't mind the blue so much. It doesn't really bug me, but I can see why, you know, purists and those who are a little more stickler for details wanted something more screen accurate. I get it. You know, I can appreciate that, but personally, I'm good with it. I mean, blue's kind of a cool color anyway, so it's all good with me. As we work our way up here. Oops. Let's go ahead and get it out of the way now. Let's get that rust off. Get these gears nice and oiled. We're in it for the long haul. And these are the batarangs, obviously. There are 3 special weapons you can choose from. You toggle through them with the start button, which would normally be pause in most of these old school games, but be that as it may, we've got the batarang. We've got a gun that fires some kind of weird missile projectile as we get ready for the boss scene here. And I've seen this boss incorrectly referred to as Firefly here and there. It's actually Killer Moth, per the manual. The two do look similar though, so I'm sure it's an easy mistake to make. I remember the first time I saw this cutscene when I was a kid, and I got so excited. It was like, looks just like the movie! Ah! Yeah, we weren't used to graphics like that back then. Sad as that is to say. This is supposedly Axis Chemical Factory, just like in the movie. And these guys, which the manual I believe refers to as Night Slayer, legit character from the DC Comics series. I don't know, it always kind of had a Predator vibe to me. Something about its helmet and, of course, that claw that it has. Very reminiscent. But continuing on, talking about the special weapons, you've got the batarang, you've got the gun, and you've got a weapon that the manual refers to as the dirk, but you're going to hear me reference it a lot as the cutter. That's what I've always called it. Speaking of the Predator, it's actually very reminiscent of that cutting device that he has in the films. Specifically the second one, I think. It's actually the weapon Danny Glover uses to take him out with, if I'm not mistaken. And we are moving right along. And of course, this game's often regarded as pretty challenging, and guess what? It kind of is. You know, this isn't a case where you hear me say stuff like, you know, it's not so bad. You know, like Karate Kid. That's one that I've never understood why people believe is so hard. Because, I mean, I remember beating that game on a weekend rental, I think when I was like 7 years old. But Batman, on the other hand, this one took some doing. For most people, it's a pretty challenging game. You know, you're probably not going to see it give me too much trouble here because I'm so familiar with it. If you've played it a bunch and gotten it down, or you're watching someone who's done that, of course it's going to look easier than it is. But if you're new to it, or if you're picking it up again after 15, 20 years, your gaming skills will be tested, which is a good thing, you know, because this is a fun game to play. So it's definitely makes for a satisfying experience when you get it down and start kicking its ass. Lots of precision jumping going on here. This definitely isn't an area where you want to make a lot of mistakes, that's for sure. Way too much electricity for Mr. Wayne's comfort zone there, I think. And the game very loosely follows the events of the '89 movie. Very loosely, actually. The cutscenes are kind of the main tie-in, but there's some other subtle nods to the film, like Stage 2 here, for instance, is the video game version of Axis Chemicals, and of course, Stage 5's in Gotham Cathedral. The Sega Genesis version follows the movie much closer though, from the way Batman looks to the enemies you face actually being Joker's movie minions, and there's even a boss fight with Jack Napier himself, pre-Joker, where he falls into the vat of chemicals like we see in the movie. Only bad thing is the Sega version kinda sucks to play. I don't know. It just doesn't have that classic NES feel to it. Timing is everything in this game. Whether you are kind of waiting for enemies to do certain things while you're jumping, or you're letting a jump carry itself just a little bit further before you wall jump again, tapping the button ever so slightly for a weak jump versus pressing it in harder for a stronger one. Lots of little nuances to get down, but not too difficult to figure out. And those of you familiar with the Ninja Gaiden games probably recognize the similarities here with the wall jumps. This game definitely has a similar dynamic in that regard. Definitely feels very Ryu-like as you're guiding Batman through the different stages here. And this is a jump. Ooh. Right there. There are some jumps in this game that get a little testy.
You said testy.
Yeah, okay. Let's not do that. But you just want to make sure your coordination is good. And we have the boss of this particular level. Some people refer to it as the Contra boss, as it does kind of have that Contra-esque feel to it. You know, like some of those old classic Konami games. God, speaking of Konami, man, what happened to them? They used to produce some of the most badass content you'd ever find in a video game platform. Now they make those little machines, those Plinko machines. I don't even know what the hell they're called. I can picture the word in my mind, but trying to pronounce it right now. What do they call them? Pachinko machine or something like that? From what I understand, that's what they spend most of their time doing these days. Which is a shame, because they used to make some of the best video games. And we want to time these to where pretty much when those cannons appear, you want to jump and fire. And if you time it just right, your missile there will make contact right when the vulnerable point presents itself. Little blue button, if you will. Not too difficult. If you get to this stage and you don't have any pellets left, no. The manual refers to them as pellets because, you know, most of us were like 9-10 years old when we played this, but I think we can call it ammunition, right? We're all adults now. But if you get to that boss with little to no ammunition, it definitely becomes a chore. Matter of fact, I mean, it's kind of a death sentence. Amusing segue from the Devil in the Pale Moonlight quote. We have these jumping mutants that are sporting some wicked devil horns. And the instruction manual refers to them as jaders. And I'm not 100% positive, but they might have been made just for this game. Somebody feel free to correct me in the comments if this guy's shown up in the comics at some point. But either way, I've always thought it's a pretty funny transition from the movie quote. And we've got one here. We're going to throw off his timing right there. And he gets kind of stuck in that loop where he can only go up or down. Very easy to take out. You want to be really careful around those guys, though, because they can screw this up in a hurry for you. Let's see if we can get through here. Nice. And we've got a drop-off coming up here where we got to be really careful. We are going to arm ourselves with the Batarang. And another one of these guys is already coming after us, but again, once you learn their patterns, they're really not that difficult. And anytime you can catch them with either the Batarang or the cutter, you're doing yourself big, big favors, keeping your health bar alive. And saving your ammunition, I highly recommend that as you're working your way through. I only use those special weapons when they're necessary. Willingly took the hit there. That's one area right there, I'm not sure why. I just don't feel like wasting the time, I guess. I'll go ahead and take the damage right quick and move on. And suddenly we are what appears to be the core of the Earth as we were working our way up. But I don't know, this kind of feels like we've been going further down. Gonna hit this guy with the cutter. This tank looking thing, I think they call them the EEV or EVV or something like that in the manual. I never really cared to pay much attention to it. And some of these guys you can actually despawn. And here's one right over here we're gonna try that tactic with. Get him shooting, and he's gone. I mean, hey, if it's a flaw in the game's code, so be it. We'll take it. And we're just steadily working our way through. Get up through here, and we've got some wall jumping to do. So how have you guys been doing? It's been a little while since we've done an old school playthrough. Hope everybody's having a good 2021. 2020 was definitely a challenging year. I hope everybody is safe and healthy and doing well. Things on my side are decently well. Bouncing back still from what was a pretty rough July, but hopefully all that's in the rearview mirror now. Enjoying some retro goodness here with my YouTube family, and hope all you guys and gals out there are doing good. Man, I feel like I'm scaling up the Empire State Building here. Come on with it. And we've got another one of these we can despawn here. And probably didn't get him. Let's try it again. There it is. Alright, here's the Electrocutioner. And we're just going to go at him balls to the wall. I'm sure there's a better strategy for him, but if you get to him with full health, just go right at him with the batarang. He can't stand up to too much of that. Kick ass. When I was a kid, I used to think this music was so funny. I don't know, I guess I kind of still do. That's one thing about Sunsoft games. The music is always so good. Naoki Kodaka is just a badass. I don't think there's one game that he does music for that wasn't up to the mark. Oof, little hairy spot here. There we go. And I love the Jack Nicholson likeness that you encounter in this game as you work your way through. And I did a little research. I wasn't able to find how they were able to use his likeness, because I don't think getting the rights to use the license of the film would be enough. I'm sure they had to work out a deal with Jack to be able to use his likeness, and Michael Keaton, of course, in some of the cutscenes that we see. But I can only imagine the amount of cash they had to pony up to be able to do that. Totally worth it though. Jack Nicholson's badass, and I love his Joker in the '89 movie. I love Heath Ledger too, don't get me wrong. You know, this is this video is not going to turn into a fanboy segment of who had the better Joker. I think each guy played it very unique, very memorable, and I think both are brilliant in their own regard. But the Jack Nicholson portrayal has a special place with me. Probably because, you know, I fell in love with the movie when I was a kid. So that has carried over into the years since. Holding that NES game box earlier, man, it takes me way back to Christmas morning in the 80s. I mean, Christmas was everything in those days, because us kids, we didn't have it all back then. I mean, most of us got maybe one gift on our birthday, and that was it till Christmas time. So for a lot of us, especially gamers, there was no better feeling than unwrapping a brand new Nintendo game on the big day. Because, I mean, it was probably a game you'd been dreaming about for months. All that anticipation building, you know, maybe you played it at a friend's house or parents rented it for you for the weekend or something, but none of that compares to the feeling of finally getting your very own copy. Definitely made those Christmas mornings something special. It's something I've always remembered. And reaching this part of stage 4 here, now I'll tell you, it actually looks more intimidating than it really is. I mean, yeah, you've got some jumping to do, and some of it can be tricky at times, but it's nothing too hard to get the feel for. Most of the hazards that you run into are pretty easily bypassable. But one good rule of thumb, though, is right here, where you have a block that's up too high and you can't make that jump. That was the first one, and we're getting ready to encounter the second one. Right here, just remember, drop straight down on that little mini conveyor and jump again immediately to work your way out of there. It's not too bad. And as I touched on in the mini doc in the introduction, these tanks were nerfed a little bit from the early beta to the final version, which I'm kind of thankful for. You know, now they skip a beat before they fire again, whereas in the prototype it was just rapid fire. They were kind of OP. I mean, you could take them out. They had more hit points before you would destroy them, but yeah, this is much more laid back, and it's much easier to get your timing right here. As we pick up more pellets, yes, because pellets make all the bad guys go away, yes. Maybe somewhere in an alternate universe, they may even call them bullets, but who knows. As we work our way up to the last platform of the stage here, and things are going decently well. You know, this ain't been a bad run so far. Hopefully we can keep it going. And these enemies here, they actually come in handy. You can use them to power up if you get to a spot where you're low on health, or some of your ammunition. They can be used to replenish all of that. Just something to keep in mind when you encounter them here. Whoa. Huh. He respawned. Whatever. We got bigger fish to fry. And this is the supercomputer. And the pattern here is pretty easy to learn. Just stand up here and punch the crap out of them. Fall down to avoid these little blast beams that they shoot out. Rinse and repeat until one of them dies. And fall down here, and we'll switch to the batarang. And we'll take this other guy out here, no problem. And cinema scene wise, this is probably one of the most recognizable shots from the film. Batman's arrival to the cathedral, albeit this is sans the devastating shot from Joker's big revolver that he uses. It's like 20 feet long. We don't see that in the cutscene, but he does use it in the boss fight, and you have to be aware of that. I think it takes like 3 energy bars off of you if you get hit by that. So, not a good idea to take too much of that. And this is probably the stage that I would say is most reminiscent of the film. This is the Gotham City Cathedral, and obviously we see some clock tower workings here that are very Castlevania-like. Just about every one of those classic Castlevania games has a clock tower stage that you have to work your way through. And this is kind of sort of reminiscent of that. And you want to be patient in this area. This is a very difficult jump. It's not too hard if you time it right. And we've got a second one coming up here in a bit. It's all about timing at this point. And we've got another one here. Let's get him. Another jump. And if you happen to fall and hit one of these clock tower gears, just jump out of there as quick as you can. It'll cost you an energy bar, but as you see, we've got one of these enemies up here that we can use to replenish our health, which I'm actually going to use right now since I got caught there. Here we go. I'm going to wait till he drops 3. That's the only time he pauses, is when you have 3 items to pick up. So we're good to go. And here's Mr. Firebug. Very predictable pattern. And we'll catch him with the batarang every time he gets close to us. Again, this is just classic NES action here. Yeah, doing good. Light him up every time he gets close. Just avoid these fireballs. Rinse and repeat. And keep chopping on him. Eventually he's gonna go. There it is. And here we go. Jack's waiting. We gotta take him out. We're gonna start with 2 jumps here. And he actually didn't even fire at us there. A lot of times he does. Jump. Avoid that gun. We'll jump again. And just keep at it. If you jump just before the lightning drops, you can stop it from getting you, but in this case, I'm causing enough damage where I'm not so concerned about it. Pow! There it is. Right in the balls. And that's it. Now we get one of the most satisfying cutscenes in the game. A little bit different from the film. Batman just launches his ass over the side. And that's gonna do it for him. Man, I love this music here. Gives me goosebumps. Takes me way back. And we get our traditional end credits here. And like I talked about earlier, this is a challenging game. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's not. It's frustrated a lot of people over the years, and I'm sure there's many an NES controller that's wound up in several pieces because of it. But every game can be conquered. If you're a retro gamer and a Batman fan, if you've never played this game before, you owe it to yourself to give it a shot. If you have played it, didn't quite make it, dust it off and give it another go. Take that challenge head on and kick its ass. And the feeling you get at the end, very satisfying. And this is Batman on the NES. Thanks for checking out the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Till next time, be well, and we'll see you again. Take care.